We're here in Lviv, and this is an interview I've been actually looking forward to, or a conversation I've been looking forward to for a couple of years now, because I started. Simon has assiduously spurned coming on the channel, but now finally I've pinned him down here in person in Lviv.
True. Not strictly true. This is cosy. I like this. This is good.
This is not the usual format, but
got a bit of space here. I'd just like to say that's not for occupation.
Simon, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, why we're here, or what you can tell about it, which is, let's say, not sensitive.
Oh, you have to shut me up if I keep going. But no. So my name's Simon Woodywis. I came to Ukraine at the beginning of the main invasion, a couple of weeks after, on the 9th of March. I came to help out a little bit here and there down south. I used to be a British Army officer. Jonathan, as you know, a long time ago, left the army in 2002, many years ago. Then worked in private security risk management around the world, helping people in companies like Motorola and various oil companies up and down Iraq, and working in East and West Africa. I've worked in every country in the Middle East, in the Gulf, apart from Yemen and Iran. All across South Asia and Southeast Asia as well, doing various security risk management type projects for multinationals mainly, and the odd police force here and there. I then went into private banking. I ran the Resnondon team at Barclays Wealth headquarters in London, and then I was a failed entrepreneur, tried to get on the right side of the table from the private banker, and I was very close to being rudely wealthy, and then someone nicked my idea, which is a shame.
There's no such thing as a failed entrepreneur. There's just an entrepreneur who's waiting for the successful idea to come along.
I got a lot of experience, and I designed and I didn't program apps, but I designed apps and websites that would have made people's lives a lot easier when it came to managing their finances, and would have been a step change from people like Money Saving Expert. Not Money Saving Expert, he's a legend, but people like Money
Supermarket, etc. Yeah.
Anyway, so I wrapped that company up and spent about a year sort of trying to decide what I wanted to do, and then the main invasion happened. And that really upset me. I don't like bullies, individuals, companies or countries, all in the same ballpark for me. So I came out to Ukraine to get stuck in, and I did for a few months. Ran a team down in the south, helping out locals in certain specialist units and some infantry units as well, and just went out there and invariably ended up taking over when things went wrong from the locals, which they quite often did, sadly. And I had a group of guys with me who were mostly excellent. There were a few weirdos, but that was Ukraine back in those days, and I'm probably a bit weird myself in some respects. But there were some couple of charlatans, thinned them out quite quickly.
Is this the Foreign Legion style, or is this the actual?
We were very much independent. We fell under the Legion hierarchy with GUR, but we stayed the hell away from the Legion.
There's a lot of oddballs right there,
then,
and some great characters.
Interesting characters. Back then, it was a ship magnet, and there was all sorts of criminals and weirdos and Walter Mitty's and a lot of very cool people. It's changed a lot, I understand. The International Legion for the Defence of Ukraine has much better leadership. I needed it. Much better leadership, much better training, much better background checking and coordination, etc.
So they will turn people down if they fear that they're just not right, or don't have the requisite experience.
Apparently they do. I have nothing to do with the military now, so we stayed the hell away from them, to be honest with you, and that went for all parts of the Legion initially, and operated independently. I was given carte blanche to plan and execute my own missions as well, which was a big thing back then. And we gave advice from everyone, from private up to brigade commander, or I did. I wrote some plans for a couple of battalion commanders and a brigade commander, which they requested, then didn't use, and then invariably things went wrong for their guys, and they lost a lot of people because they didn't use the sensible plans that I produced, frankly.
And this is like, we know better, or we've got a better idea, or just I don't like it because it's your idea.
Well, people would ask for assistance and then not execute those plans and orders that I prepared for people, and that was I think hubris in this country still is off the chart. You know, the hubris is a killer. You know, incompetence, pride. And several other ingredients form a deadly cocktail. I'm not going to go into those and start slagging off the locals, because there's a lot of epic people out here, guys and girls, and a lot of people that know exactly what they're doing, know what to do. But then you get that in every country and
every army,
and every army. Yeah. But there's a lot more in some. When it comes to conscript armies, they are. There's a lot of challenges that you don't get in a professional army. A lot of people here, that will wind up a lot of people, I'm sure, that statement, but it's a fact. Britain has been training to fight Russia for 70 years, and many other NATO countries as well. So no matter what people say about how these guys are fighting the second best army in the world, that's just not true. The second best army in Ukraine is the Russian army. The second best army in Russia was the Russian army too.
When Ukraine were in the Kursk and Belgorod incursions.
The Russians are absolutely, they are no match for NATO armies. Full effing stop. Okay,
and that's even with the drone component.
So I'm talking about a ground invasion of a NATO country. Ain't going to happen. They'd get minced. They'd get minced in the air, on the ground, on the sea, and underneath the sea as well. There's a lot of drones, obviously, that changes things. And obviously they've got nukes, and then there's the hybrid warfare aspect of things. And these things have to be considered, of course. And that's what makes them still a threat, of course. A big threat, and a threat that needs to be dealt with promptly, robustly, as aggressively as possible. They need to be crushed into the Ukrainian ground, full stop.
Fertilizer, I think that's the local perception.
There's a lot of Russian DNA fertilizing Ukrainian fields, making the wheat go stronger right now.
And the sunflowers are slightly more yellow.
And that needs to continue on a much grander scale. And we need to be doing a lot more to support these people, a lot more financially and militarily. I've got my own opinions on that.
And we've talked about the Ukraine obviously fell under the orbit of the Russian Empire for a long time. A process of Russification was imposed upon them. So I think your point is that Ukrainians are different in many respects, and some of those are things that need to be dealt with, especially the forced Russification. Some of the features are actually positive. They're different in a positive way, but Ukraine is far closer to us. And I think your point is that it's Russia that's fundamentally different, despite superficial similarities. Well, skin colour being one of them.
Well, it depends on what part of Russia you're in.
Yeah, but their profession to be, Christian and whatever, and all the rest of it, they play up the similarity. But actually, you're making the case that there's fundamental and irreconcilable differences.
100%. As I said to you earlier on when we were having that delicious lunch just now, and I've said to
which Simon paid for. Just have to declare declare an interest here. I'm not going to be softer on him just because he bought me lunch.
Yeah. But no, the Russians. I've been saying this to people for a couple of decades now, and people used to look at me thinking I was a bit of a warmongering, whatever. But they're not like us. But no, the Russians are. They're not like us. I've been saying this for, as I said, a couple of decades. Their kids would go to the same schools as my friends and family's kids. I used to work in a bank. They might work in the same banks, the same law firms, the same accountants. I had Russian tenants in one of my houses in London, and they go to the same tailors and the same restaurants. It's a kind of inverted racism, really. I often think, people think that someone is that they're like someone else because they look the same. And that's the case with the enemy, and obviously by enemy I mean Russia. But they are not like us. They don't think the same way as us. They don't act the same way as us. I remember one of my favourite clients who used to work for BPTNK, and he explained to me at great length, one of the first times I met him, just how different they were, and it was an eye opener, and that was 20 odd years ago. And ever since then, I've strengthened that. My opinion on them.
It's extraordinary, the physical resemblance and the fact that the adoption of Western dress, manners, and so on.
It's just
but
a
actually,
ruse.
It's a ruse, and that includes. This will upset a few people. Russian. I used to call it soft power, but actually, literature and culture is hard power as far as they're concerned, and it's a way to play on that inverted racism that we're the same as you. Therefore, you need to normalize our crimes and say, okay, well, they're committing horrific crimes, but that's the exception, not the rule. That's not the educated ones. It's an extraordinary strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we've behaved very poorly in the past around the world. I mean, we had a huge empire, and a lot of countries benefited from our presence. And a lot of people did not benefit, and a lot of people were treated very, very, very badly a long time ago. And I'm not going to start apologising for things that people did. All these liberal idiots back in the UK who think that we should be paying reparations for something that happened 200 years ago. They can go themselves, as far as I'm concerned. You know, that's something that ancestors did, and it's not something I'm going to start apologising for or get my head in a twist about.
As long as we don't reinforce iniquity, and we struggle to fight discrimination now, I think that's great.
Exactly, 100%, and we do. But the Russians think that they can behave like we used to behave 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, or however long ago, and think that because other people did it back then, they can do it now. And they are behaving so poorly in this country. I've seen on live drone feeds them executing people, executing their own prisoners because they're their own wounded. I saw that on a second-hand feed. Russian officers or NCOs head jobbing people that were badly wounded, or they couldn't be bothered to get them back to an aid station.
Бажаємо міцного здоров'я. Ми бійці батальйону безпілотних систем Black Raven 93-ї бригади Холодний Яр виконуємо бойове завдання на Константинівському напрямку в Донецькій області. Для їх успішного виконання наш підрозділ має потребу в пікапах для виїзду особового складу на позиції, евакуації, своєчасного підвозу боєприпасів, дронів та обладнання в район ведення бойових дій. Звертаємося до YouTube-спільноти Silicon Curtain та Джонатана особисто з проханням допомогти підтримати збір, а також до Car for Ukraine та Бандера Мобіль з проханням допомогти з купівлею, підготовкою та доставкою авто на фронт. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And that's pretty common practice in a lot of places, especially when the Russian troops had come out of prison riddled with HIV and hepatitis of various kinds and other disorders. So rather than contaminating aid stations, they zap them on the field of battle. Fine, you know, I don't have a problem with that, but that gives an example of the sort of people that we're dealing with here. And I don't think people really understand or want to understand just how rotten these people are. And people need to understand that, and they need to get their heads around that and start supporting this country in a far more aggressive stance, far more aggressive.
And the interesting one, because we want to get onto the sort of drones and NATO, because that's a really interesting point of contention. You actually do hear a lot of here, and I have to say, in some of my episodes also, I think NATO's problems are political, and question, you know, whether when push comes to shove, it will be able to demonstrate any unity and effectiveness in reality. But that's not to say there aren't the organizational levels and capability beneath that. It's more of a political question. But and of course, I mean, one of the things is we know that they have absolutely no care for life, not just for their enemy, but they actually have no thought or care for life.
Couldn't give a monkeys about their own people.
They couldn't give a monkeys, absolutely. They're just resources. As Zelensky said in the first week of war, you know, they treat their own people as logs that you throw on the fire when you want to raise the temperature a little bit. But here's a crucial difference, I think. Fundamentally, there's always going to be hubris and so on, but fundamentally it seems Ukrainians want to learn from the outside world while preserving the best of what they got. They want to go and see, okay, well, how's this done better, right? And we won't come to that with a sense of rejecting it or feeling humiliated or resentful. We will take that and we'll internalize it and spin it and make it a little Ukrainian. Whereas the Russian mentality, and again, this is going to be offensive to some people, but unfortunately it's an overriding mechanic of the Russian mentality. It doesn't matter how rich or capable or what you've got that you could share with Russia and teach them, they don't want it because they want to tell you that they're right and you're wrong. And fundamentally, they want to bring you down to their level, make you more like them.
Second-rate people always do this, and I've seen that, I'm afraid, in some units here and around the world, but it's been quite prevalent here in some cases. But especially with the enemy, they're subpar on many levels, on pretty much every level, and they will. The only way they can feel better about themselves is to try and denigrate other people. And the Ukrainians have been struggling to preserve their identity for God knows how long.
Centuries.
Exactly. So yeah, they've been up against it. So I can fully understand, and I get behind your statement there that, you know, they will take something and they'll use it to promote themselves as best as possible. I just want to strengthen a point I made before. I've got nothing to do with the military now. The company, as you know, that I run at the moment is called Objective Ukraine Limited. It's based in London and also in Kyiv. And what we do is we help people who want to move to this country. I set it up at the end of 2022 to promote business in this country. So foreign companies that want to come to work in Ukraine, because there's not enough of that happening still. So foreign companies that want to move into Ukraine to take advantage of this epic workforce, and there's a lot of people available still, and the ideas and the brain power they have here is off the chart in many cases. So we set up the company, or I set the company up to draw on my experience in private risk management or private security risk management around the world, working for large organizations. And we help people to plan to come here, to move here, and to work here successfully and safely. And not enough companies are doing that. There's all sorts of opportunities in this country, not just in the defence tech space, but in agriculture and all sorts of great things going on here. And a lot more companies. There's quite a few people sniffing around here, but there's not nearly enough people committing. I'm the sole advisor currently on the Defence and Security Committee for the British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. I would urge people to join that as well. That's run by an exceptional chap called Bate Toms, an American. He's currently in London doing very valuable things, trying to organise an ombudsman for the legal practice or legal profession in Ukraine. And the co-chair is a guy called Jock Wilson, who again, like Bate, has got a 20-year history plus.
No, I think I met him in a
of Ukraine. Epic businessman.
Fantastic character.
A brilliant character. Like Bate as well. They complement each other perfectly. And there's other people supporting them in and out of Ukraine. If people want to get a good foothold on this country for business, join the British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, and they'll get a leg up. They'll also get access to my network as well. My network in Ukraine, especially in the defence sector, is second to none. Partly because of my service, and partly because I've done the things I've done.
And you've been here for a number of years,
yeah,
so you're really embedded.
3.5 years now. So I know people in all across AFU, MOD, mainly Army, some other services within the MOD and kind of associated with security. All the defence attaches and a lot of people in the defence manufacturing space. Like we met this week at the Brave One event, which was epic.
There's a lot of stuff there. Extraordinary amount of innovation going on.
At the Lviv Arena, 200 exhibitors. As I said earlier, I had 13 meetings yesterday afternoon alone. I met about 100 plus people in the 2 days of the event. So people need to get more involved in these sort of things. Another great company to be involved is UBN Network, Ukraine Business News Network, run by an epic guy called Andrew Perma and another good bloke called Mark McNamee. Both Americans. Andrew's also got Ukrainian heritage, and they have quarterly events and they distribute daily analysis, which is worth every penny that you spend to be a member. So those two things: British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, UBN Network, and my company, Objective Ukraine, will help you to get a
Can't say that often enough.
in this country.
Description's going to be in the description, right, with a link as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the topics I want to focus on, I mean, we could probably, we definitely talk for hours and hours and hours.
100%.
And with yes, we do. But I'm fascinated at the moment by two things. One is the state of reform and how excellence coalesces in the Ukrainian army, because I think one of the challenges is that excellence, as you've said, is there, and certain units are able to foster it, attract line-minded people, but that doesn't necessarily translate in a systemic way right across the army. And that isn't necessarily communicated to regiments that could or should be reforming. So that's the first side. And the other one we'll come back to is NATO, drone warfare, and actually how Russia will play to its strengths, which is drones, terror, economic damage, as opposed to full-scale invasion. And I think a lot of people are missing what they can actually do by focusing on what they can't do or aren't capable of doing. But let's talk about the systemic strengths and weaknesses of the Ukrainian armed forces.
So I've got connections in quite a lot of brigades across the country, guys that used to work with me, for me, whatever you want to say. I used to work with them, and I keep my fingers in a few pies, and as best as I can to maintain this network in order for other people to take advantage of it, in order for them to get involved with Ukraine, in order for them to help win the war, etc., etc. I've got my own opinions as an ex-infantry officer about infantry, and they're always right, like all my opinions. Just ask any of my ex-girlfriends.
Never wrong, yeah.
Obviously, I'm joking there. But for our American viewers, that was irony, that was sarcasm. The infantry training programs that you have in Ukraine are not up to par. Full stop. Sorry, Ukraine, they're not. I know people who run them for some brigades. I know people who have got 200 people coming through at a time, and they're training them on their own on a lot of lessons, or in charge of all of the training, with very few people being seconded to them to support these training packages. They're not up to par, they're not standardised, no matter what people say here. Ukraine needs to do a lot more to recruit infantry. You cannot take and hold key ground with drones. You can deny it to the enemy, you can deny it to the enemy with indirect and direct fires, but if you want to dominate ground, there's only one thing you're going to do that. Until someone invents a T-2000 from Terminator or whatever it's called, there's only one thing that's going to take and hold or recapture lost Ukrainian real estate, and that is boots, infantry. Okay, and they're not being trained properly. We're not helping them to train. There's a lot of British soldiers in Ukraine. People know that, far more than any other country, doing a lot of great work to train the locals. There's not enough support coming from other countries, and Britain could be doing a lot more as well, to be frank. But I am proud of what I know that the British Armed Forces are doing in and out of Ukraine. We need to take gloves off here and just be honest about what's happening here. We are supporting Ukraine on the ground, okay, with British troops, okay, and I don't care who knows that, frankly. We need to, as I said, we need to be a bit more honest.
We're not talking about the operational details or any special forces, but
and I'm not involved in any of these guys. Not, but I know what's going on here. Other countries are not doing this, and they need to step up. Okay, they need to step up and help a bit more. And Ukraine needs to take advantage of what's being offered. Forget about pride. Forget about what your mates might say in the officers' mess about how you're taking on too many foreigners to do the job that you should be doing for your own country. It's bullshit. Okay, people, and a lot of Ukrainians will accept as much help as they can. But there's a lot of people here who've got their eyes on careers.
Should we formalise that? Should we go further? And is close in the skies, or getting boots on the ground, or putting people into a training role?
We shouldn't be fighting. This is their war. So the whole idea about them defending Europe, I mean, it's turned into that. But when people first started saying that, that was just a marketing line, as far as I'm concerned. That was something that would generate support outside the country. But as I've also said in the forums before, that's a double-edged weapon. If you scare people about the Russian threat, and it's, as I said, there is not a ground threat from Russia, okay, or a sea or an air threat. They're a joke, frankly.
And Ukraine is a barrier. They'd have to get through a big chunk of Ukraine to get to most of Europe.
It is now. But when people first started saying that they're defending Europe, that was just pure marketing.
And the Poles, the Poles would like nothing more than to have a whack at the Russians if they.
I think some would, some wouldn't. But it's a double-edged weapon. If you scare people too much, then they'll hold stuff back. Okay, they won't empty these huge stockpiles of equipment. So Britain generally stores a third of everything it buys. The rest of it is well maintained, wrapped up, put in storage, whatever. Just like the Americans wrapping things up on the high plains in Arizona or California, wherever it's the boneyards or whatever they call them. We could be providing a lot more of that stuff to Ukraine, a lot more single items instead of giving them thousands of everything. And it would make things easier for them. But if you scare people back home that there's this Russian threat, then people are not going to be so willing to give as much support as we should be doing. So we need to get over
the drone incursion. The drone incursion, I think, one of the primary objectives, not just to humiliate Europe by showing that NATO is relatively toothless on a political level, but it is to scare Europe into hoarding or stockpiling, say, air defence.
100% agree with that, and I've said that to people myself. I mean, this drone incursion thing, I mean, it wasn't an attack on Europe, okay? It was testing the water, etc., etc. But they've been doing the same thing with their long-range aviation for ages. I mean, it just happened to be above ground.
Throughout the Cold War.
But throughout the Cold War, and they're still sending Tupolev Tu-146 Bears or whatever they are. I mean, Jesus Christ, they say it's the fastest propeller-driven plane ever. But driving those things must be a nightmare. And they've got a handful of them, but they're still using them to test our airspace. And they've been doing that forever.
And we've been putting planes in the air to escort them out or
exactly. And we've been doing it over their territory too. Anyway, that's another story. But no, we need to be doing a lot more to support infantry training here, definitely. And there's some cracking guys here. There's a guy called Kevin Leach, who I think you know.
I mean, Kevin's a good friend of mine.
Kevin, I met for the first time after listening to your.
Well, I'm glad you rate his training because it's difficult for me to judge the quality.
Yeah. So, well, I haven't seen his training. I haven't seen the training program, but I judged the man.
Yeah.
Within a few minutes of meeting him, and I liked him. There's a lot of epic guys like that here. Again, lots of little groups of people doing good things. As I said, within a month of being in Ukraine, certainly with the stuff I was involved in, there's too much nibbling and not enough coordinated chomping. And when you look at Ukrainian special forces, they are and special forces without the inverted commas, because there's a lot of good guys doing that.
Not special forces.
There's a lot of fiefdoms, a lot of people protecting their budgets and things like that. Now, as I said, I'm not involved with the military, so I can't say exactly what's happening. But I get the impression that there's still a lot of nibbling going on, especially with volunteers helping things.
And there are pockets of real excellence, but
all across the country,
they will jealously preserve. Once you've created this, you don't want anyone to come in and basically screw it up.
People need to just bite the bullet and go, do you know what? I'm going to turn everything I've got or built over to that guy or to this coalition of guys, and we just need to put things on the table and compare them, and then make an adult decision about who's going to lead things going forward or who's got the best idea. And only by standardizing and coordinating and joining forces with the people, and this goes for the Ukrainian military as well, I think things will improve.
And there's a deficit of trust. I mean,
the training needs to be a lot better in order for people to be satisfied about being sent off to, or not satisfied, being comfortable being sent to an infantry unit. But they have things to think about initially that they shouldn't be having to think about.
That's it. And of course, a lot of people
in order to get people to stay there.
And a lot of people are fully aware. I mean, Ukrainians are actually very aware, much more aware of the problems than many. And sometimes they're exaggerating. Sometimes it's, they're looking at it from a personal rather strategic perspective, which is fair enough. That happens a lot. But I think they are very aware that if you end up in, say, an infantry unit that has a very hierarchical, slightly sort of Soviet mindset, you're not going to be able to ladder up ideas or suggestions.
Correct.
The officers aren't going to be open, especially when you point out, the flaws in operation which might get you all killed or wounded. So they're going to choose to go to the more democratic, the less hierarchical.
There's also,
and that tends to be unmanned systems forces battalions.
Also you're in the rear with the gear in a lot of cases. You're closing with and killing the enemy who's on the other side of that field, or you don't have that hovering above you, that thought that that you might get an order to go out and do what we would class as a completely normal mission, but it's obviously pretty hairy and
especially if it's civilian
and scary
as a
conscript. Exactly. Lots of people want to join drone units because they're attriting the enemy. They're attriting the enemy far more than anyone else, because basically they are doing far more, the others aren't doing as much.
I don't know the ratios, but what would be a reasonable ratio for every drone pilot lost?
I've heard that up to 80% of enemy losses are caused by drones, but that's because that's pretty much the only thing.
That's the figure I heard yesterday as well.
Now, there's a lot of good work happening in some areas, but across the board, the units that are facing or combating the enemy most of all, or most consistently, are the drone
The figure
guys.
I heard yesterday, I think the phrase. So I was told that 80% are direct impact from drones, but the other 18% out of the rest are facilitated kills by drones, which leaves really only 2% of all the rest.
When you've got to use drones when there's not much else, or not enough of what else there is. But going back to the infantry again, some conscripts will use poor training as an excuse for running away or not wanting to join the infantry. Someone's got to do it, and people just need to step up and bite the bullet. And there's a lot of strong men and strong women out there joining infantry units, but we need to encourage a lot more than what the Ukrainians need to encourage a lot more than, because, as I said, I'm not involved in the military anymore.
Well, there was a unit who downed tools, and they didn't necessarily run away, but they basically said, we refuse to work for a commander who will no longer listen and give stupid orders. So it was a mutiny, but it was a clear signal that we will fight, but our voice needs to be heard, or...
There's that. I mean, if you look at the units that have control of all the training all the way through, it's people like Azov obviously spring to mind. There are other very well recruited and well trained brigades out there, like the 3rd Brigade or 3rd Division, whatever it's called now. So the ones that take control of the training and invest in it properly. So give enough training ammunition, give enough money to the training, have enough people doing the training with combat experience, and accept enough help from foreigners as well. Those are the ones who've got the lowest casualty numbers, and those are the ones. But that needs to happen across the whole of the Ukrainian armed forces. That's an uphill struggle that ain't going to happen ain't going to get completed anytime soon. But I do think we just need to keep supporting them as much as possible. And there are countries out there that are just not doing enough at all. you know who you are.
So there's an interesting figure. So if we take 80% the drones related to direct kills, and that include wounded, etc., but direct, destruction of a Russian strength, and 18% of assisted kills. What is the implication, though, for NATO? Because, as you say, they'll get minced. But if they have pockets of excellence in drone warfare, and NATO has not internalized either the ecosystem of drone production, integration, training, and tactics, what is the implication for basically an incompetent army, yet which has high drone capability, versus a NATO one with nice, expensive, shiny platforms, but which doesn't really have that skill at scale?
I'm confident that if Russia tried something and it remained conventional and they tried sending drones over, the drone manufacturing establishments wouldn't be on this planet for very long.
It would kick off.
Well, we just
quickly
take away where the drones come from.
Yeah,
like that.
They'd be
and we can reach out and touch Russia any time we wanted to. And now these idiots, these pissed up idiots in Moscow, who still believe for some bizarre reason that they have some special place on this planet, and that they should be listened to, and they should be able to dominate countries like Ukraine, who are sovereign, independent nations with a rich history of their own. They're never going to get a head around it, because when they start displaying weakness, then they have to admit to themselves that they've been wrong, and Russians will not do that.
Yeah.
And also, if Putin starts backing down on something,
he's done.
He's end off,
Yeah.
or certainly at least one of his.
And
his
we have
doubles.
air power, because we haven't really seen air power play a role here in terms of.
The Russians have got a handful of decent aircraft.
And they're using it to kill civilians. I mean, they're not using it in tactical battlefield.
So the Su-57 that people bleat on about being this wonder weapon the Russians have had, they've got decent coatings on the outside, because they've nicked that technology from the downed F-117 in Serbia, where it was a long time ago. As when it comes to avionics, the stuff inside that makes it an efficient fighting machine. I imagine, and I'm not a technical expert, but I've read a lot, so I'm going to put this opinion out there, that they are dog shit compared to ours. They don't have the volume, they don't have the training, they don't have the money to maintain these things. When they go on exercises, they're highly choreographed. There's no mission command at any stage in the Russian armed forces, as far as I could see, or as far as I could see back in 2022. And when it comes to air power, sea power, subsea power, when people compare Russia to the West, or say they're a threat, they're demonstrating a profound lack of knowledge. Okay, I mean, they're just not. They're not on the same playing field.
But
China's
informationally in hybrid, that's a different question, because
100%, yeah,
they
been
could
screwing around with us for years, and just like we've been doing with them. So,
but now seeing with drone incursion, as you say, it's a teaser, it's a tester, it's a toe in the water. It seems to me that this could go a lot further, in that relatively easily, with even limited numbers of drones, they could, for instance, disrupt European civilian airspace, costing hundreds of millions.
Absolutely.
At the same time as mounting informational campaigns to destabilise us internally.
I think we would expend a lot of very expensive munitions, taking down some very cheap weapons that are making incursions into our territory, and we would replace those weapons fairly rapidly from our war stocks. And then once that started happening, the place where those drones came from would disappear. So yeah, we would react in a way that Ukraine has not able to do. And people here laugh at the way we're spending lots of money shooting down things, a couple of dozen things that came across the border. We don't have 5,000 mobile anti-shed teams with guys and girls with old Maxims on the back and someone with a laser pointer. And some far more technologically advanced anti-shed teams as well that they have here. But we don't have that. So yeah, we'd be knocking things down pretty quickly with some very expensive man pads, SAMs, aircraft, etc., etc. I mean, but then again, we're using things like the Hydra 70 range of rockets, 2.75-inch rockets that have been around since before the Vietnam War. They're now fitting laser seeker warheads to those, so you can laze things coming across the border. I can't remember the name of the company that has been selling things or testing things in Ukraine, and they've been quite effective. But you get these cheap little 2.75-inch explosive fragmentation rockets that are used for helicopters that are now shooting down drones in country. Drones that are being marked with or painted with a laser, and then these things just rocket onto them.
So if Russia was to put drone incursions onto a regular footing, so larger scale, with an increased regularity, you think
it would cause a great deal of disruption.
Yeah, but we would react. We would start to build up our defence quickly.
Yeah. I mean, there's been the warning. We've had the warnings now. There'll be people getting their asses kicked in various departments across various countries in Europe, hopefully. But the response would be overwhelming for Russia if there was a proper incursion. As I said, we'd knock things down. It'd be very expensive for us. It would cause a great deal of disruption in our airspace and economies, etc. Those things would bounce back pretty quickly, and then the return for Russia would be devastating.
And of course, we can indirectly give Ukrainians what they need to destroy the logistics, the factories.
We've been doing that. I mean, these sea drones. A lot of the technology that's being used for drones here came from the West. Surely people know that.
Not everyone knows
that. So the naval drones that were sinking ships, that's Western technology. So boffins coming into this country with their very, very special bodyguards, showing them how to do things, helping them to do things with money from us, and then letting them go off and do things themselves.
They have the ingenuity and adaptability to pick that up quite quickly.
Because they're very smart people here, very smart people. The Americans were messing around with drones, naval drones, 30 plus years ago, but they went the same way as the hydrofoils, the littoral and ocean-going hydrofoils, who were kicked into touch because the budgets were needed for something else. Admirals wanted them so they could have more destroyer squadrons to play with. The drones were seen as maybe there was no threat because Russia collapsed. That's another reason why the hydrofoils went missing or went away, because the Soviet threat just disappeared when they just disintegrated in the pathetic way that they did.
And will do again.
And they will do again, yeah. With our support, this country can turn things around on the battlefield, but the enemy is creeping forward in a lot of places. And more infantry, more support from the West. More direct support from the West, from a lot of countries that are not doing enough. And things will change here quickly. Ukraine's not going to lose. Ukraine's not going to lose, but what winning looks like is different for a lot of people. As far as I'm concerned, victory is getting them all out, okay, crushing them into the ground and then sweeping the remainder back across the border. But I'm not sure how quickly that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So people, as far as business is concerned, people need to just get on with it and come over here. If you wait for things to be perfect, you'll miss the boat. Okay, other people will move in here, win great contracts to help the Ukrainian economy, start building things here, start mending things here. And the people that did are waiting for all the corruption to go away. There's corruption in every country. We just got nicer suits in the UK.
You just need to know how to navigate it, come in with some moral standard, and
perfection is the enemy of good enough, as many brainier people than me have said in the past.
And it's not an essential. I mean, this is what I learned from Ukrainians, is you can behave in that way, but actually you can choose not to, and you can get stuff done. And you might come up against some roadblocks here and there, as you will in every country, but you can choose to operate in a transparent way, and many people are. And I think that's a key message. And Lviv, you say, we're sitting here in Lviv. I mean, you've got the level of risk, if you were to try and calculate it. The risk is, you're more likely to fall off an e-scooter than be hit by something.
Been there, done that on a Bolt scooter a few months ago, after a couple too many beers. But they make me smile, so I get on them. And that's what people should be doing here. Come to Ukraine, get on your metaphorical scooter or whatever, and you'll be smiling with the results. There are companies here that are no doubt issuing warnings of how much security you need. If you leave a window open, a drone is not going to fly through it. That's what my mum thinks. The skies are not full of Russian bombers. A, because the Ukrainians would swat them, and B, because they haven't really got any. They need to.
Well, certainly not since Spiderweb.
They keep them way back in the rear with the gear, and that's where they're safest, and that's where they launch their missiles from. They're a threat, but all of these threats can be mitigated. So what we're doing, we're not making a new space shuttle. We're not splitting the atom in a different way. We're helping people to mitigate risks. We're helping people to tick boxes for insurance, basically. But we're obviously, the main effort is keeping people who want to come here and work here, keeping them safe and make them feel comfortable about working here. And that's pretty easy to do when you do things properly. You don't need armoured vehicles all over the damn place. You don't need armed protection, which is illegal in most cases anyway. It's not Iraq. I used to run teams north, south and in the middle of Iraq. for years, and you don't need that level of security here. You need sensible people with experience and great connections who can help your business to move forward safely and objectively.
Fantastic, and it's a great venture. It helps Ukraine towards victory.
We're doing good work, and we're enjoying it because we're working with these people and we're making a difference. And I want that to happen with a lot more customers. I've got a great network, as I said before. I want people to take advantage of my experience and knowledge and network here, which I believe is second to none. And that's what we're going to keep doing.
Fantastic. Well, a real pleasure to do this. I hope the audience gets as much
nice
as I did out of it.
Always
Thank
a pleasure.
you, Simon.
I'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
Excellent.